Good morning, and I am here today with Omuugn. We are experiencing experiences. Today we're reading from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn, which is a book that was a long time coming. And I say this because as I experienced life, Omuugn is one of the people I've known the longest in my life. He is, in fact, my dad. So my dad and my mother, the two people that I've known the longest on planet Earth. And every day, Omuugn challenged me to be the best version of myself. Every time I tried something, he'd say, wait a second, can you do a little bit better? And he gave me more encouragement to try things from a different angle, to look at life from a different perspective, and then to try to be the best version of myself. So today we're going to talk about experiences, those that encourage us, so those that inspire us, and those that challenge us to make us want to be a little bit better. So please help me welcome Omuugn. How are you today?
Good morning. It's a beautiful day here in Eastern Oregon. It's overcast and raining, and we need the rain, so it's a blessing. So we're doing well, and it's a beautiful day.
I'm in rainy North Carolina this morning. It's also an overcast day, and I'm delighted because my outdoors needs the great rain. So I'm sitting here saying, "Yay, free rain!" And then the chance to unwind some of these topics here on this platform with you. So it is an awesome day.
Yeah, and it's an exciting topic today. There are actually three elements to this. One is experiences and how we deal with them. One is about the lessons that we actually learn from those experiences. And one aspect is how we continually learn and grow as individuals. And we kind of pull all of that together. Our experiences give us the lessons that we need to learn that help us to continue to learn and grow and develop if we utilize them properly.
Well, as we get started today, I want to say hi to our friends and our fans. We've got Melanie Brown that says good morning from Utah. We've got a Facebook user that says hi from Cozumel. So I'm so excited that you guys are joining us today. Thank you. Feel free to jump in and add your questions to the comments, and we will answer as many of them as we can today. So, a couple of things, experiences. They happen to everybody, and there is a way that we can use them to our advantage. Tell us more about that.
Well, it's kind of interesting. In today's world, most of the people in our country, like 80% or even more, are dissatisfied with the way our country is moving politically. And why would 80% of us sit back and watch a country go in a direction that we don't want it to go? Some of us live in cities where there's a growing amount of illegal immigrants and homeless people and situations that we don't really prefer. For example, many of the stores in downtown San Francisco have shuttered their stores and they've gone out of business. There are many corporations who are pulling their stores from areas where the crime is so rampant that they're actually losing money.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a situation in America today where we're almost well, we have as many divorces happening as we have marriages. And we have so many problems with teenagers and generational gaps, more so than we've ever had before. And so we have a lot of health issues in America today. With all of the advancement of medicine and all of the advancement of the science and all of the research that is being done in so many areas, yet we have increases in cancer and in heart conditions and in diabetes and in chronic conditions. We have more and more people with weight issues, trying to go on different diets and trying to lose weight and trying to be healthy. So apparently, from all of the experiences that we've had, there are not very many things that we've learned that have created a really happy, successful, productive society in so many ways. We do have a happy, productive society in some ways, And I don't want to just approach the negative side, because a lot of positive things really are happening. But we have way too many negative experiences that are not being resolved. We're surrounded by information. We're surrounded by ideas. We're surrounded by all kinds and types of religious thoughts and practices. And we almost live in a world where we're overwhelmed with this information. And so the question becomes, how do we sift through all of this? How do we create a reality that we really want to experience? How can we create a reality that we enjoy? When we get up in the morning, we're just excited. We anticipate the day, and we look at all of the opportunities before us, all of the possibilities. We should be really, really excited. And yet too many of us get up and we say, oh, I have to go to work today. I know I'm going to be caught in 3 hours of traffic, and I hate to travel in this traffic. I hate the congestion. I hate the pollution. And we just approach everything in sort of a negative way. And there has to be a way for us to relate to what's really happening in our lives and change the things that we don't like. How do we actually process these experiences? How do we process the challenges that we face or the hardships that we face? And how do we deal with all of this information overload? We have to have a process to do that.
And so the question is, how do we do that? I know that you mentioned, I have to go to work. I know that in our company, we've changed the word have to get to or love to. I get to go to work today. I get to find an answer for you. I'd love to find an answer for you. And so by replacing a couple of words, it can help us reframe some of those hardships and adversities. So tell us, what are some of the ways that you would recommend just on an average day? I'm an average person off the street. Maybe I can't change all of the world around me, but I can start changing things in my own personal life, in my own personal home. What are some of those things that I can do to take action today?
Well, one of the problems is that we are creatures of habit.
Mm.
And so we get in the habit of accepting abnormalities as being normal. We have the habit of having habits in our lives that are non-productive. We have the habit of the way we think. Sometimes, like our news today, our news tells us what to think instead of how to think. Instead of giving us information, they give us propaganda. And so we have to have a way to be responsible for the way we think and the way we process information. I can tell you my own experience, and it's the reason that I wrote the books. It's the reason that I've found that there's information that is so important that it just needed to be shared, especially with my own family. I have a large family, as you know, and I wanted to leave a legacy of information and the way to deal with it so that all of my children could process things maybe more adequately and more productively. So here's my process. First of all, there's awareness. You have to actually stop and become aware of things. I am aware that possibly my family isn't functioning the way I want my family to function. Maybe I'm aware that there's a problem in my marriage. Maybe I could do something to get along better with my spouse. Maybe I have problems with my children or a teenage situation. How am I going to deal with that? So it starts with me of being aware. And what I found was that there has to be some standard by which you judge things. If you don't have a standard, you can't measure anything. You're just floating around in a nebulous sea of bewildering experiences, and you don't know how to relate to them.
Do you have triggers? And I say
Pardon?
triggers that would then help you be aware. And I say triggers. For example, when I'm at my kitchen sink, that's a trigger for me because I would never go to my kitchen sink for myself. I go there because my family, I'm washing dishes, I'm fixing a meal, I'm doing something for my family. So anytime I go to my kitchen sink, that is a trigger for me. And as I stop and I look out the window while I'm washing dishes or as I'm preparing a meal, I ask myself, what have I done for my family today? And sometimes I've done nothing. And so, okay, I'm packing a lunch right now. Maybe I can leave a little post-it note that says this lunch was packed with love. Just a little post-it note on the inside of the lunchbox. When they open it up, they're going to go, hey, wow, look, I was loved today. But that's a trigger for me. Do you have triggers in your life that help you be aware? Because it's easy just to blow through the day aimlessly without stopping to be aware. So if you don't have an awareness habit, how do you become aware? What do you do?
Well, first of all, we have different kinds of triggers. For example, this is a principle that's important to realize. The more general something is, the less applicable it is to us. And the more specific something is, the more we can deal with it. And so if we're in a life that we really enjoy and we're happy, it's because things are working well. But if we have situations, and not all situations, we can be happy, but still have situations that we have to deal with. So I break my triggers down into there are intellectual triggers, there are emotional triggers, there are physical triggers, and there are spiritual triggers. And so whenever I have an experience, first of all, I ask myself, what kind of experience is this? Is it an emotional thing that I'm going through? For example, I know someone who experiences road rage all of the time. If they're out on the highway and a car passes them, they become angry. They're
Okay.
angry because the car passes them. The car had the audacity to be on the road at the same time that they're on the road. And that's sort of a physical, natural response that they have all of the time, every time a car passes them. Or if someone pulls in too closely to them, it doesn't take very much. If too many people are in a car, they get angry about it. So you have to identify what kind of a situation you're dealing with. Is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it spiritual? Is it intellectual? And sometimes various of those apply. Something can be intellectual and emotional and have a spiritual wrapping. So the more specifically we can identify what we're dealing with, then the easier. See, a road rage is an emotional thing. And so if you can identify, say, I'm having trouble with my emotions. Why would I have trouble with my emotions? Well, the thing that you have to realize is that we are not a singularity. We are a complex composite of things. For example, someone may have an adult body, but a very immature emotional aspect to them. And someone can have, they can be intellectually mature, but emotionally immature, or physically immature. For example, we have little children who understand things very well. We have little children who can respond emotionally like an adult. Their emotions are already mature because maybe of their experiences or their examples. We all learn differently, and so some children learn very quickly how to observe things and how to respond accordingly. Some children go through the same problems over and over and over again their entire life, and they never emotionally mature.
You know, it's interesting. I have a younger sister who was at a very young age. Our grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, came to live with us. And so she was a participant in taking care of grandma. And so her experience as a child was very mature as far as caregiving and learning to love other people and to be compassionate and kind and supportive and all these things. She gained this whole emotional set of wisdom at a very young age. Then she had a younger sister who had Down syndrome. And in the process of that, she was caregiving on both sides of this equation. And so when she went out on her own as a young teenage woman to then start her own life, the people that she attracted into her world were very mature adults that were like in their late 50s and 60s, because she'd already lived this whole entire life of caregiving and support and emotional draining. And how do you work your way through that? And it was really interesting to watch her now. She's still a very young adult, but her philosophy and her wisdom is just decades beyond her age, if you will. And it's interesting to watch her as an adult because she just runs circles around everyone her own age. It's just interesting to watch. And I think the experiences that we do have in our lives form and shape our opinions and our beliefs and our philosophies of life. And so what you're saying is, yes, it's very possible that someone who is mature in one area may not be mature in another area, simply because they've spent all of their time and wisdom and energies on a particular segment of life. So that's really interesting to see.
Yeah, there's so many variables. For example, let's go back a step to who we really are. We have certain traits and characteristics. A trait is a genetic thing. You're born with your traits. And then your characteristics are things that you develop as you experience things. And so, for example, all of you siblings share the same DNA basically from your parents, but you are all so different. You have different belief systems, you have different traits, because there's an area called epigenetics where you're going to pick up genes from certain aspects of your ancestral lineage. For example, I have a brother who's very musical, and he has several children who are very, very musical also. They just sort of inherited that capacity. He has a child or two that's not very musical. So some genes are turned on and some are turned off. And each one of us has a very, very particular set of genes that are turned on and genes that are turned off. And we can turn genes on and off. It's the field of epigenetics. And one of the reasons that we use, for example, affirmations is that we can take an idea and put it into our subconscious mind, and we can review things until that becomes a new pattern, and we turn those genes on through choosing to do so. For example, I can decide what kind of a person I prefer to be. And if I don't have the characteristics and the qualities and the traits of that person, then I need to restructure my genetic makeup. Otherwise, see, what we do is we live out our belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And many of our belief systems are just simply inaccurate. We pick up things along the way. For example, some people are afraid of spiders. Why would you be afraid of a spider? It goes back to some experience that you had maybe when you were young, or your mother saw a spider and she screamed and yelled and jumped on a chair and called for someone to come in and smash this creature. And so maybe as a little child, you figured that being afraid of spiders is just kind of a normal thing. So we need to be aware of what our genes are and how we respond to things. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book was I identified each of the traits that we have genetically. And not all of them are turned on and off for everyone. We're all different. We all have our own peculiar way. So if you take a subject like we're talking about today, taking experiences and learning from them, how do you do that? Well, some people's genes are turned off. They can go through the same mistake over and over and over and over again, and they don't learn the lesson.
That was me. I went through 10 years of dating what I call nerds. I just had one bad date after the next for like 10 years in a row. And I'm like, okay, I think maybe now it's me. I mean, I don't think there are 10 years of nerds that I've attracted into my life. Maybe I'm the nerd. Maybe it's me. And so I sat down and I did this on a conscious basis. I did this intentionally. I sat down and I wrote out on paper what my perfect relationship looked like, because I said it's apparent to me that I don't know what it looks like because it's not showing up in my life. And if it is, I'm not recognizing it. And it's just slipping by me. And I just keep going out with nerd after nerd after nerd. Okay, this is not working for me. And I gave up. I pretty much gave up the dating game. I'm not one to go to bars and I don't go to dating apps and all the things, but I swore off dating. I said, I'm done with this game. I've had it. I've just had it. And on the way out the back door of this dating game, I made a backdoor deal with God. I said, if there is somebody for my life, that they better drop into my life easy and effortlessly and have less problems than I do. Okay. Not very high standards. These are my requirements. But I spelled out exactly what it was like. I wanted someone that would be respectful, someone that was going to be reliable, someone that would be kind and compassionate, someone that specifically loved his mother and was going to treat his mother with respect. There was a series of things that I was looking for, and I created a tape. And you talk about the affirmations. I recorded it in my own voice because my head and my heart recognized my own voice. And then I played it every night as I would fall asleep. I'm in the perfect relationship. And I created the affirmations as I am already have accomplished these things. So I listen to them every night. I'm in a happy relationship. I'm in a relationship that's loving and that serves me and the Lord and the people around me. And I went on and on and on about what this perfect relationship looks like. And I listened to it every night, even though I wasn't dating anyone. But what's really peculiar is when I walked into a car dealership where I met the guy who is now my husband. The minute I walked in and I saw him, it clicked. That's it. He's the one for you. He's the guy that you'll marry. And I was like, no, he's not my type. And my conscious mind tried to talk it away. My unconscious mind is like, that's it. That's exactly what you're looking for. Just a couple weeks ago, we celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary. And it is exactly what was on that tape because I was crystal clear about what I was looking for. When it arrived, I recognized it. But until then, I spent 10 years wasting my time going on date after date after date, not recognizing what I was looking for because I had not articulated what I was looking for and what was right for me. And so when you talk about you can reprogram your epigenetics, I don't really know if that's what I was doing, but what I was doing then is becoming crystal clear about what was going to work for me and being very honest about myself, why things hadn't worked out in the past.
Well, you bring up several ideas that need to be explored a little bit. One of them is that we're surrounded in a field of universal consciousness. For example, there are people who believe that space is a vacuum, that nothing exists in outer space. And it looks like we're surrounded by nothing. We don't see the air. And yet, in the room where we are right now, there are like 3,500 television stations broadcasting in this airspace. There are countless radio stations broadcasting in this space. There are all of the internet connections and all of the Wi-Fi and all of those things in this space. We are inundated in a space of information, but we don't perceive any of it. So we're on a certain frequency, and the frequency that we're on is what we experience. If I'm using the computer, I will go to the channels that I want to experience. And the only thing that I experience is the channel that I tune myself to. I don't see anything else that's happening on the internet. If I'm learning a garden procedure on how to deal with hydrangeas, I call that up and I look at it, and everything else is blocked out. The universal intelligence works with us when we become very specific. things begin to happen, like in your situation, where the universal intelligence will bring things together the way you program them to come together. And there are people who are healthy because they believe they're healthy, and the universal intelligence will support that. We call those things placebos, where we take a placebo pill that doesn't really do anything for us, but we believe that it does, and so it does, because that universal intelligence will support that. When a baby is growing in the womb, look at all of the processes that are going on, all of the organs that are forming, all of the glands that are forming, all of the blood vessels and everything, all of the joints and the cartilage. You don't know how to do any of that. There is an intelligence that operates in the background that knows how to do all of that.
That is
And
so awesome.
it really is awesome. That same intelligence supports us in everything that we do if we allow it to. And what we want is to maximize ourselves, and we want to do everything that we possibly can to nurture ourselves in the best possible way. That's why we try to eat the right foods, because we know that on a certain level, on a cellular level, certain nutrients, certain minerals, certain vitamins, certain things are required for you to be optimal. And if we live on fast foods and junk foods and we eat candy, we know now the science has proven that will deteriorate our health. And over time, if we, for example, there was a football coach, he, every day, it was just a habit, he would drink 13 colas. And that was just his habit. And it didn't take very long until he had health issues and was forced to retire. And I don't know if the colas were responsible for that, but it was one of his notorious habits, and it very possibly could have been his downfall. So we need to be aware. Going back, the process that I came up with that works for me is to become aware, and I didn't know what to become aware of. And so I did the research on all of the traits that make us who we are. I came up with 158 traits. And then I could look individually at each one of the traits and say, what should this trait really be in an ideal person? And so I went to the scriptures. I'm a Christian. And I went to the world's, it's called wisdom literature. It's literature that's been handed down through the ages, and many civilizations have been built upon these principles. And so I developed a standard by which I could judge things. And the ideas for this standard came out of this world experience and world literature and things that have been working for time immemorial. And then I could take a trait and take the wisdom of this particular trait in the scriptures or in the wisdom literature and say, this is what the trait should be. And once I could define it that way, then I could look at my own life and say, how does my life measure up with this trait? And if I were the ideal version of myself with this trait, how would I respond to things? How would I do things? How would it impact my life? I ran into some things where what I believed about things it was a false belief.
Mm-hmm.
I had to change my belief about things. And I had habits that were not productive habits. And so I had to identify those in particular and say, this is what I'm doing, and it's not beneficial to me. And so I need to be responsible and I need to be accountable for who I am and the decisions that I make. No one really can do that for me. No one can eat health food for me. No one can exercise for me. If I'm going to be the person that I want to be, I need to identify those areas and be responsible and be accountable. So I need some kind of a process to do that. And in your case, making the tape and going through that affirmation over and over and over again, very clearly defining what you want, was how you resolved that. You became accountable for your outcome, because one of the foundational principles is cause and effect. Every effect has a cause, and if you put the right cause into operation, you're going to experience the effect of that cause.
Well, I did something similar to what you're talking about, but I did not use the scriptures and wisdom literature. I used empirical wisdom, because sometimes I find myself saying, why am I doing this? And I don't really have a very good reason for doing it. And if I walk myself logically through the reasons that I know, then I say, well, that kind of doesn't make any sense anymore, but I've always done it this way. Is that still working for me? And one of the things that I noticed is I had kind of found myself on a path of junk food. And you talk about junk food, and no one can eat the nutrients that your body needs for you. You have to be responsible to do that on your own. And I was eating junk food because it tasted good and it was inexpensive and it was convenient. So those were my logical reasons for doing it. But I started walking through what are the benefits that I'm getting from it? And other than the convenience and the availability, I didn't really have any very good reasons. So I did a little test for myself, and I got a cup of water, and my cup of water test was this. I'm going to take some food that I'm eating right now, and I'm going to drop it in this cup of water, and I'm going to walk away for 1 hour. And if I come back and it's still in there, when I get back in an hour, I will eat it. Then it's good for me. But if it has dissolved, or it has taken on a new shape or a new form, or if it has become something completely different, then it probably is not a whole food that I should be eating. Now, if I drop a carrot in there and I walk away for an hour, I come back, it's still going to be a carrot. But if I drop a donut in there and I walk away for an hour and I come back, I have no idea what it is. You take some nachos with fake cheese on it and you drop it in there. You walk away for an hour and you come back, I have no idea what that is. So I started being really honest about what is inside that cup of water when I come back after 1 hour. An apple is still an apple. Lettuce is still lettuce. You get where I'm going with this? I started breaking down, saying, wait a minute, this food is still here for me after an hour, and whatever this other stuff is needs to be flushed down the toilet. And then I should not be eating that in the first place. The next test that I did, I unplugged my refrigerator and my freezer. And I said, if it has to go in there to survive, I shouldn't be eating it. Food that comes from the earth is still going to be okay after a couple of days, but ice cream after a couple of days, not going to be okay. And so I started weeding out the things that I was putting into my refrigerator. And I used my refrigerator as a storage unit for my food. So it was like a cupboard, if you will, but I didn't plug in the electricity on it. And I did that for 1 year. Well, I tell you, after 1 year, you stop eating things like mustard and mayonnaise and ketchup and all these other things, because they're not still good if you don't refrigerate them. Once you've opened them, then they start to turn bad. And so I stopped buying those things that were frozen and prepackaged, that had to be, put inside a refrigerator or freezer in order to keep its shape and its life. So it was a really weird education for me. But then I started thinking, am I eating real foods, or am I eating a bunch of packed chemicals? And I mean, I can literally walk down aisles of the grocery store now and just kind of like, packed chemicals. Skip that aisle, go to the next one, But that for me was kind of the way that I broke myself of eating a lot of that stuff that was just so fun and so tasty and so convenient and full of nothing but preservatives.
The bottom line is that the more processed a food is, the less food value it has for you. That's just a principle. If things have been taken to a really high temperature, if they've been mixed with all kinds of ingredients and chemicals and all of those things that man does to preserve food, you'd be better off at a farmer's market buying some whole food. But everyone needs to have a process. And one of the problems that we have today is that the reason that our country is in the shape that it's in is that not very many people have a process to deal with things that they don't prefer to experience.
Mm.
And so we need to get into a sort of a mode of operation where we need to be aware of things, and then we need to prioritize things. You can't do everything, but you can do some things.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to decide what we really want to accomplish. What are the issues that are most important to us? Because we all have our own different belief system. I know a fellow who was so adamant. He was a pro-life person, and he was so adamant about this concept that he literally went down and had his name changed, and pro-life is his middle name now. It's actually his middle name. So you need to be accountable for yourself, and you need to have a process to do that. You need to become aware of things, and you need to know what the standard is so that you can deal with things. And then it takes us into a whole new era of, or a new arena of, say, this person who has road rage. He has to identify that it's an emotional problem that he has. Well, first of all, he has to realize that that's a problem. If he were the ideal person emotionally that he could identify by looking at the principles, he would see by looking at his own life that he was not emotionally up to the standard that he knows would be the true standard.
Mm-hmm.
So then what he could do as a process is he could sit in a chair in his living room and imagine that he's in his car and cars are passing him. And he responds differently than he normally does.
Mm-hmm.
How would the ideal person that I want to be, how would they respond with a car passing them? And if one of his objectives is to be a cheerful person, he wants to remain cheerful while this car passes him. He wants to feel happy. He wants to actually realize that his attitude is changing. And he can program himself to enjoy people passing him. It's like you can enjoy standing at your kitchen sink and doing the dishes. There are aspects of that you can actually enjoy. That doesn't need to be drudgery and a thing that you don't look forward to. The very ability that you have. I bring this up sometimes, but I know a person that he lost both of his arms. And it would be so wonderful for him to be able to stand at the kitchen sink and do his dishes. And yet now he's unable to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real blessing that we're able to stand at the sink or do any chores. It's a blessing that we're able to do that. And it's a blessing to make our house cleaner. It's a blessing to take any habit that should be implemented into our lives and learn to enjoy that thing. Enjoy making your bed in the morning. What a wonderful opportunity it is to be able to get up and to make your bed and to pick things up and to make your room organized and beautiful.
I want to highlight this for just a second because I did a whole entire video. And for those of you that are just joining us or watching the replay, I spend the majority of my time training house cleaners and maids, and my background is in cleaning. And so I did a video that became really popular, and it was on gratitude cleaning. And this is something that I learned from Omuugn when I was very young. When you're at your kitchen sink and you're washing dishes, instead of it being a drudgery task, how grateful are you that you actually have running water inside your house and that you have dishes to wash? Having dishes to wash means you had food to eat. And so being grateful for that opportunity is a whole different mindset than just saying, oh, drudge that I got to sit here and wash dishes. Like, what an awful task to do. Like, hey, what a blessing it is that you have dishes to wash in a home where you got a roof over your head and you have running water and you had food to eat. How grateful is that? Like, how cool is that, right? And when you start looking at all the different things, Omuugn was just talking about making our beds. What if you lived on the floor of a hut and you didn't have a bed at all? How cool is it that you have a bed with soft pillows and a mattress, and it has sheets on it, and it has bedding, and it keeps you warm at night, and it's cozy, and it's in a nice environment? Like, how cool is that? All you have to do is get up in the morning, straighten and tidy up the sheets and make the bed and make it look nice again, right? Gratitude cleaning is then creating a whole environment around being grateful for the stuff that you have. When you are of service to it, it serves you back. And I remember one time being ungrateful for the opportunities I had to clean. And I realized you can't be grateful for this. It can't bless your life unless you bless it first. And so then I started showing up every day to clean, saying, hey, how can I bless this situation so that it blesses me back? That I can enjoy and be grateful for this particular thing that I'm cleaning, because in some way or another, it served my life in a way that was way, way, way more comfortable than not having it in the first place.
Well, this is really the essence of our meeting today. And if you're going to take something away from today's meeting, this is what I would like you to take away. Everything that happens to us is our experience. Everything we do today is an experience. Every person that we meet today is part of that experience. Every opportunity that we have to learn something new today is part of that experience. And what we want to do is to maximize each of the experiences. If we're going to interact with someone today, we want to make that a perfect interaction. We want it to be a win-win for both parties. I want to give them positive energy, and I want to take positive energy from them. It needs to be a symbiotic relationship where we add to each other. I don't want to suck someone's energy away because I am depleted. So
Speaking of
every
energy, I want to say hi real quick to a Facebook user from California. Hi, thank you so much for joining us. We got a Facebook user from Oregon. Hello. We got one from Cozumel. Hello, how are you today? And then also from Utah. So glad that you guys have joined us today. We're so glad that you're here. And there's a quote that's inside the insights and wisdom of Omuugn on today's topic. And this is what Omuugn is talking about right now. For those of you that are just joining us, he says, everyone you meet has a lesson to teach you. And so this is really important when we're talking about everything that you experience and everyone that you meet. It's part of an experience that you have a choice. When you're aware, you have choices of how that's going to affect your life. Tell us about the people you meet and how we can be aware in those moments.
Oh, absolutely. It happens both ways. You meet people that are obnoxious. You meet people that are loud and boisterous. You meet people who are so self-centered that it's just annoying. And so you need to ask yourself the question, what can I learn from this person? Because every person can teach you something. And okay, that's how I do not want to act in public. That's how I don't want to sound in public. I don't want to annoy people. And you can gain all kinds of lessons from an obnoxious person.
Mhm.
So instead of just being annoyed at a person, start picking out all of the lessons that you've learned from that experience. If you're around a person who's very intelligent and who has just a cheerful attitude and they're fun to be around, what have you actually learned from that person? And how can that better your life? And as you become aware of the traits that you have and what the ideal should be, if you see that personified in a person, that's sort of that person has incorporated this concept so well that I want to emulate that in my own life. Or that person is so obnoxious, I learned that lesson vicariously. I don't want to be that person. The people that I'm around, I want them to experience from me that ideal person, not the obnoxious person. And so your whole life is just a series of experiences, and you want to maximize each one of them. You have to be aware of what's happening emotionally, intellectually, physically, and spiritually and identify what area the lesson is coming from, or what areas should be incorporated into this situation to make it better. And as we do that, we begin to be responsible for our own process. And
In my
I can tell
business,
you,
we have lots of people over the years that are we call them high maintenance customers, and they will give you some directives, and then you take notes and you come to an agreement on the expectations of how those will be resolved. There comes a price that goes along with that, and you give them a bid and a quote, and they agree to the price. Then somewhere along the way, they change their expectations and they change the directives, but they want the price to stay the same. And then they nitpick at all different kinds of things. And we're talking about the cleaning business, but there are these really high maintenance customers that will make you go mad if you're not careful. And over the years, I've had lots of employees and lots of cleaning business owners come to me and they're like, what do we do when we have these really high maintenance customers? Can we just obliterate them from our lives and not serve them at all? We started looking at those customers as being worth $5,000 a piece. And here's where we got this from. If we were to hire a private company that were to come inside our business and they were to disguise themselves as mystery shoppers, and they would go through all the different avenues of our business, and then they would make a report and they would complain to us about where our shortcomings were, where we were falling short, where stuff had fallen through the cracks, where we didn't live up to the expectations we promised or whatever, and they would give us that information. That would be the ammunition we would use to improve our services and make us ourselves better than our competition. For that service, we would pay about $5,000. So here's the cool part. We have someone that is paying us to come into our company and to be our mystery shoppers. And they're going to complain and they're going to give us all the details and the nitty gritty about how we're running our business and how we fell short and all the things. And then here's the really cool part. We do not have to pay the $5,000. We get it for free. And they're paying us for the service. They are paying us for the privilege to be our mystery shopper. How cool is that? So if instead of being like, there's a high maintenance customer, how about like, hey, look, we just got a new mystery shopper. And when we can resolve their issues, then we know we've patched up all of the gaps in our business and we're good to go, right? So let's look at every one of those customers as like a freebie that the earth gave us, like a freebie mystery shopper we did not have to pay. And by reframing it, it's really interesting how our high maintenance customers turned into some of our very best customers ever when we were able to patch the gaps and solve the complaints and then fix those going forward for other customers that we serve. And so there are things we can learn from our experiences, but sometimes you're going to have to force yourself to look at the situation differently. And for us, each of those high maintenance customers was worth $5,000 to our company. Here's where we got the $5,000 from. That's how much you would pay a mystery shopper service. On the other side of that, our average customer on a bi-weekly cleaning basis is worth about $5,700 a year. So we didn't lose the money. We actually gained the money for them to come be our mystery shoppers. And so that's how we reframe that in our particular situation.
yeah, that's an excellent insight into how we can reprogram the way we look at things. And there's another aspect of that too, and that is, what could you do in that relationship to improve the relationship? If you would actually take the time to analyze the person, maybe the person is lonely. Maybe the person has a health problem. Maybe the person acts the way they do because they have a relationship problem with their spouse. Something's happening in their life that doesn't involve you at all. What could you do to make that person respond differently? And if you actually take the time to stop and become aware, there's maybe someone needs a compliment. Maybe you could go to a person and say, this aspect about you is something that I really enjoy. Thanks for being this kind of an example for me. And you can give someone a compliment or just something that would change their demeanor. And another thing that you can do is be very specific contractually.
Mm-hmm.
And when you walk through the house, you fill out your contracts and say, this is what I've agreed to do for this amount of money. And if they change it, you go back to the contract and you say, well, this is what we agreed to do. What you want to do is something different. So let's do another contract, and this is what the price will be. And you can always make things very, very clear by the way you communicate with people, because we find ourselves, all of us make assumptions. In order to not make an assumption, you would have to have all of the information pertaining to something. And it's very seldom that we have all of the information about something. So
It's
we make
true.
assumptions.
It's true. I had this customer whose home we cleaned, and her house was immaculate. And she was really high maintenance. She nitpicked everything that we did. And so one day I took her aside and I said, "Stop, stop, stop right there. Stop right there. What is going on here?" I said, "Every time I come to clean your house," I said, "you demand that I come to clean instead of my employees. You want only me. So I come to your house and I'm really pretty good at what I do. And I get to your house and your house is already immaculate. And now you're nitpicking the work that I do. So let's break this down." I said, "You know that you are an immaculate house cleaner. You do not need me to come to your house, yet you've demanded me. Then I come to your house and you know that I'm the best at what I do. And now you're nitpicking me. What is going on here? What is really going on?" And the lady stopped and she said, "I'll tell you what's going on. It's not me or you." She said, "It's my husband who's OCD and he comes home and he nitpicks all the housework that I do. And I thought if I could hire the best, then I could transfer whatever he's telling me is he's nitpicking and I'm passing it on to you because I don't know how to clean it any better. You don't know how to clean it any better, but this is what he's telling me." And I said, "So in this particular scenario, you and I both agree your house is immaculate and you don't need me here. Is that true?" And she said, "That's true." And I said, "Oh, good. I'm so glad for that. But you love cleaning. It's apparent by the home that you live in. Is that true?" She said, "Yes, that's true." And I said, "Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, this is not about you and me. Whatever this is not about you and me. This is about you feeling validated for cleaning your house and not getting it because your husband comes home and nitpicks." And she said, "That's correct." And I said, "Boy, do I have a job for you. With your cleaning skills, I would love to hire you and have you come work for my company because you can get paid for it, number one. And number two, people will appreciate the job that you do." And she said, "When can I start?" And I said, "Like this afternoon. You can start like today. You already know how to clean." And I hired her and she was one of my best employees ever. But what happened, exactly what you're saying. You have to break down what is really going on here because there may be things that are not apparent. What was not apparent to me, this is not my work in question. This is not her work in question. What is going on?
Yeah, if we live in a world of assumptions, we're always going to be off base somewhere. And so the more clear we can make an issue, the more clearly we can define what's expected, it just resolves a lot of things. And like you say, if you come to the real issue, then you can resolve it. Our life is just a series of experiences, and what we want to do is learn all of the lessons that we can from each experience. And you want to upgrade your lessons to the highest that you understand. That's why you need to be familiar with the eternal laws and foundational principles that operate in the universe. If you can align yourself with those principles, it's going to resolve a lot of the issues. And you get to the heart of the issue. And you're not dealing with just what you assume. And especially when you're in relationships with people, usually it's your assumption of who that person is interacting with their assumption of who you are. And so we have two assumptions working together, which is very inaccurate. So we need to learn to communicate and communicate on a very specific level. The more specific, the more beneficial to everyone. And the more general, the less meaning it has for everyone.
So I want to ask you a trick question. I know that you said that we learn from every experience that we're a part of, but how do you know when an experience that you're in and the lesson that is being taught is complete?
Well, that's why if you understand the universal law and the foundational principle, you you'll find that there's an alignment. If you feel really joyous and happy about something, if something lifts your spirit, if someone or something is just exciting to you, you like to be around certain people, and certain things are happening that are good, you know things are working well. That's really the ultimate objective. We want our lives to be happy and joyous. Everything that we do should be uplifting and adding to that joy that we experience just living life. We can't enjoy living life to the fullest degree if we're sick and if we don't feel well.
Mhm.
So we need to be aware maybe that our sleep patterns aren't what they should be, or maybe our diet isn't the way it should be. Maybe we're not exercising the way we should. As we identify those things and experiences that were not beneficial to us, that have brought us to this place, we realize that we need to make a change. We need to change our belief system. We can use affirmations, we can use sleep tapes, we can use hypnotism, we can use examples of other people, we can call in mentors, we can find good examples to follow in all different kinds and ways of things. There are people that we admire, we can ask their opinion. How would you respond to this thing? Uh, yeah, we're looking for joy and happiness and well-being. And if we're experiencing that, then we know that we're in a good place. If we're arguing and fighting with people, if we have road rage, if we hate to do the dishes, if life is a drudge and dreary, then we know that we're off base and things need to change. And once we become aware that a change needs to take place, then what would the ideal be? What I've done for myself is I've created a system of filters, and any idea or experience or thing that comes up, I run it through my filters, and I let the filters determine how I would objectively respond to this thing or what I could learn from this thing. For example, one of the filters is polarity. Energy is moving in one direction or another direction. If you're with a person and it starts to be argumentative, or you feel depressed, or you feel anxiety, you know that energy is moving in the wrong direction. So you need to stop and say, I'm going to reorient this energy in a different direction. And so, what direction do I want it to move in? Well, I want to be happy and full of joy and peace and love. And so that's where I'm going to move. I'm going to take this conversation to something that will be beneficial to both of us. I'm not going to argue about something. If if you're married to someone who's OCD, then you need to communicate with that person. You need to sit down and have some very strict guidelines of how you're going to interact with each other. You don't want their life to be miserable for you. And if they're going to be OCD, it's okay. Let them do the cleaning in the house. Let them put everything away and be responsible for that. If that's what their hangup is, let them take that responsibility. You don't have to take that upon yourself to try to appease them. So if you know exactly who you want to be, then you can create the scenarios that will allow you to be that. So,
In closing, I have one last question, and this is from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. One of the insights is we learn while we are teaching. From an experience standpoint, how is it that we learn while we're teaching from our experiences?
well, when you teach something, you have to really know the material. And to really know the material, you have to be aware of everything, and you need to know how things work, how things come together. If you're going to teach someone, for example, how to change their attitude, then you have to really understand what attitudes are and where they originate and the principles upon which they originate. And so you have to know a lot more about the subject that you're teaching than the student you're teaching. And so that helps you to really understand things in a deeper way, because you really have to know the material. Uh, I've written many, many articles. And when I have a question about something, I have to do the research. I have to get in and find out how things work. And when I do that, then I'm able to teach it. And I've found that I can learn because not everything I know do I implement in my own life in a perfect way. So I'm always in a state of learning and growing. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination perfect. So I can learn and grow from every person I meet, everything that I experience. Uh, that's how I try to do it anyway.
What one piece of advice would you give our listeners and our viewers today that they can implement today as they go from week to week until we see you again, based on the experiences and the things that we've talked about today?
Learn from every experience. Identify whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, or whatever it might be, and then approach it on that level. If you need to make an emotional adjustment, that's what you need to learn. Maybe you don't know enough about things. You need to engage your intellect to gather research and approach it in a way that you understand things. So be responsible for your belief system. Be responsible for your actions and learn from everything that you interact with and every person you interact with, and learn from every decision that you make. Learn from every experience all that you can from it.
That's so good. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in and for listening. And those of you that are watching us on the replay, I really appreciate your time and attention today. All of you. This is so much fun for me to spend time with you guys on Saturday morning. So thank you so much. Please join us again next time when we will be covering the next insight from the insights and wisdom of Omuugn. And until we see you again, please be the best versions of yourself.